Welcome to ABA 10 Talk, a rapid-fire conversation with members of American Business Associates. I'm Ellen Volpe, and my guest today is Nancy Jacoby. Welcome, Nancy.
Thank you, Ellen.
You are a catalyst in healthcare, and I'm very anxious to hear from you regarding the changes in healthcare, how you remain passionate about what you're doing and what you're actually seeing in the world.
Oh my gosh, well, there's so much to be passionate about in healthcare, and you're right. Healthcare is a rapidly changing, constantly evolving field. What with technology and the way that we treat patients and reimbursement, there is so much changing constantly in healthcare. But I think what keeps me passionate about working in healthcare is that I get to make an impact, a real world impact every day. And I do that by helping the leaders who lead in healthcare, in our hospitals, in our medical offices, in our laboratories, in our pharmaceutical agencies, across all spectrums of the industry. I get to make a difference.
The stakes are so high today. What is it that you're observing that you feel we can be optimistic about?
Well, I just got back from the annual ACHE Congress in Houston.
And that is?
And that is the annual industry congress for healthcare, and it's the place to be, where we network, we exchange insights, we solve problems, we talk about all the changes and the issues that are impacting healthcare. And I came away with such optimism about the future of healthcare leadership. There are so many young, energetic, new healthcare leaders joining the industry, and there's even more focus from them on making a real, tangible impact, which is heartwarming.
Yeah. I mean, in what, can you be more specific about where those changes might be taking place?
Oh, at the heart of the matter with the patients. It's how we're treating the patients, how we're setting up the environment to treat patients, how patients can have, for example, a more comfortable inpatient stay, how patients can feel more in charge of their health care, teaching them how to be advocates, teaching them how to speak up for themselves. But also, it's about helping the healthcare industry and helping their healthcare facilities change in a way that best serves patients, that best helps the research that's being done on the bench, getting that research to the bedside, making sure that we're educating the next generation of doctors. And there's so much energy around it.
So you are a catalyst and a coach on a very high level. And I'm wondering if you could share an example of some recent programs that you've delivered.
Well, so I work one-to-one and I work in groups. And one-to-one, one of the biggest impacts that I've had is I worked with a leader who, she was considering a pivot, and she was also trying to move into a new role. And, we started working tactically on some of the things that were going to help her get to her goals. But really what she had was a blockade with confidence. She needed to really own her own agency and stop asking permission to do things for herself. And working together, we really got her there. And then in my group, I created something that I called the Leadership Lab, where we worked on negotiation, conflict management, and feedback. And it was such fun to have 4 people in this lab where we really got down deep and we worked scenarios and we laughed together and we had a lot of fun. But what was real was they all came out saying, I feel more confident going into these scenarios in my real world life. And that's the difference.
Yeah, so I mean, it seems that element of confidence sort of oozes everywhere.
It really does.
And I wonder sometimes in a leadership position whether or not those leaders are able to bring out, that level of confidence in people that are coming up.
Yeah.
Sometimes I think the leadership is sort of one-dimensional in what it is their role and responsibility is, but there's such a human element to what it is you're doing. And I'm wondering, do you get resistance from leaders in terms of coaching? How is that today?
Oh, never. Of course I do. It's, I was talking with a colleague a couple of weeks ago, and they asked me the same question, and I said, I expect resistance. Why? Because what is coaching about? Coaching is about building awareness of yourself, which is always hard to do, even when we want to build awareness. And then once we have that awareness, we have to face the reality that, maybe I need to make some changes.
Right.
And some of us change more easily than others. And I find that the higher up the ladder I go on the org chart, the more resistance sometimes I get.
Right.
Although sometimes I'm surprised. Sometimes I think, oh gosh, I think this person's going to have a little bit of a hard time. And, they come through just fine. They have a lot of enthusiasm. They come ready to work. So you never know. But that resistance is there, and I do expect it. It's a natural part of the process.
Right. I think that, I think everybody needs a coach today.
Yes.
You just happen to be in healthcare, where I think there's a huge need for that. But how did you come to healthcare? I mean, it seems like, you have this innate desire to help humans in general, but how did you get into the field?
Well, it's funny because when I grew up, my mother kept one of those little books for me that she would update every year, and one of the questions was, what do you want to be when you grow up?
Right.
And for a couple of years in succession, I would say astronaut, teacher, nurse. Right? Those are my top three. I think I put doctor in there at some point, but it faded out eventually.
Yeah.
When I started college, I was a psychology major, but I said, this isn't enough. And I think I really want to go into nursing because I want to be at the bedside. And I loved science. And I said, I want to combine science with caring to be able to make a difference. So that was my start into healthcare.
Right. Those three categories all have something in common.
They do.
Right.
They do.
Yeah. That's really at your core, I think.
It really is. It's a passion that I have that I've always had.
Right.
And when I was coming up in school, a lot of my teachers said that I was a quiet leader, where I didn't make a whole lot of fuss, but people naturally gravitated towards what I was doing, and when there was something to speak up about, I was the one doing it. And so nursing then collided with the desire to lead. And I found that being a bedside nurse, while wonderful, I wanted more.
Yeah.
And that's what led me into the leadership side.
Yeah, to have more impact.
That's right.
I'm sort of fascinated with how healthcare is changing, and I'm wondering, do you have experience with AI in terms of what it is you're doing?
Oh, yes.
What you see? How are you using it?
So, AI is here to stay,
Yes,
is what I tell people. It's here to stay, and it's going to become even more and more a part of our lives.
Yeah.
And I've personally used AI to help me with creativity. If I'm trying to draft something, or if I'm thinking of a new program, I might start typing my ideas and say, let's see what we can do with this.
Yes.
And then I get something to react to, rather than you're starting with a blank screen or a blank page. I encourage my clients to do the same, particularly if they're trying to draft a cover letter or they're trying to write a business plan, whatever they're doing, right? But also if you're looking for information-related answers or skills-related answers, or you have a scenario, you can type that right into ChatGPT, and you get all this input that you can then use to say, does this make sense? Does it not? Does this fit?
Yeah.
Does it not?
Yeah, a draft.
That's right. It's something to build upon.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So one other question I have for you. What do you like to do in your free time, since you're so committed to the leadership here?
What do I like to do in my free time? I have a whole list. I like long walks on the beach. I love food and wine. I relish any chance that I have to spend time with family and friends.
Nice.
I love taking in everything that New York City has to offer, and I just finished watching The White Lotus, so I love a good show.
That seems to be very important. If you've enjoyed this conversation with Nancy Jacoby and you'd like to learn more about other ABA members, or you'd like to watch our 10 talks, be sure to visit our website. And Nancy, before we go, how can they reach you?
They can find me on LinkedIn, or they can email me at nancy@njacoby.com.
Thank you for joining us today.